So first we're gonna implement end-to-end list students feature, and then we'll see how to implement add student feature, and then update student feature, and delete student feature, and etc. So first we'll focus on implementing list students feature. Okay, so in order to implement this feature, first we're gonna change a backend part, and then we'll move to front end part. So in order to make changes at a backend part, we'll go with the student repository. So student repository already gets all the CRUD methods to interact with the database, so we don't have to change anything in student repository. And then next is we move to student service and student service IMPL. So inside a student service, we're gonna define a method here that is get all students, list of student. So make sure that you choose a list from java.util package, and the type is student, and the method name is get all students. Okay, great. Save the file, and let's go to student IMPL class, that is student service IMPL class, and just mouse over on it. Okay, and we need to implement the method that just we have defined in student service, right? So go ahead and click on add implement method. So before implementing this method, let's first annotate this class with add service annotation. So make sure that whenever you create a service class, then make sure that you will add service annotation on top of it. Alright, and we are going to also inject the dependency here. So we are going to use constructor based dependent injection to inject the dependencies. So we are going to use student repository here. Student repository. Okay, so as we are using constructor based dependent injection, so let's go ahead and let's create a constructor here. Right click, source, and generate constructor using fields. So we have only one field, that is student repository. And just remember, whenever the Spring Bean has only one constructor, then we can avoid using add avoid annotation. Okay, we don't have to use add avoid annotation here, because this Spring Bean has only one constructor. Okay, great. Now let's go and let's implement get all students method now. So get rid of this comment, and here we're gonna call student repository. So student repository basically provides all the CRUD methods. Okay, and we're gonna call find all method. So find all method basically returns a list of students. Perfect. Now we have done a changes at a service layer. Now it's time to change a controller layer. Okay, let's move to student controller, and within a student controller we are going to inject first the dependency, that is student service. And as we are using constructor based dependent injection, so let's create a constructor for this class. And if Spring Bean has only one constructor, then we can omit at avoid annotation. Now we are going to create a handler method to handle list students request and return model and view. Okay, so just create a method here, public. It returns a string, that is a view name as a string, and then just give a method name is as list student, something like this. And then let's annotate this method with @getMapping annotation, and let's provide a URL here. The URL is students. Okay, and let's add a model as a method argument to this method, model. So make sure that you choose model from org.springframework.ui package. Perfect. Now let's add a data to the model. Model dot, just call its method, that is add attribute with key value pair here. So the key is students, and value is we retrieve a list of students from a database. Just call student service, and student service has a method that is get all students method, right? Yeah. And next we just return a view from this method. Return a view, the view name is students. Okay, so we haven't created a students view yet, we are going to create right away. Alright, so go ahead and just expand the resources folder, and under resources folder you can see here templates folder. So basically Spring Boot will auto configure a view resolver for ThemeLib. We don't have to manually create a view resolver bin for ThemeLib, because Spring Boot will automatically configure a view resolver for ThemeLib whenever it will find a ThemeLib dependency in a class path. Okay, we have added a ThemeLib starter dependency in a pom.xml. So Spring Boot will automatically configure all the view resolver and other dependencies for ThemeLib. We don't have to manually configure. And one more important thing is Spring Boot will by default find all the ThemeLib templates under templates folder. Hence we need to keep all the ThemeLib templates under templates folder. Okay, understood? Just note it down, these points. Now let me copy the students view and just right click on templates folder, new, and then go to others and just search for HTML file. Okay, and just give HTML file name as students.html. Okay, let me just expand this templates folder and look at here's the flow. Student controller has a list students handler method. It returns a view, and this view we have just created here. And now model has a list of students. Now we are going to display this list of students in a view, that is students.html. Okay, I hope you understood the flow. Now we are going to design a HTML table to display a list of students in students.html file. Let's get rid of this default title and just provide title as student management system. And one more important thing is that we are going to use Bootstrap Css framework to style our web pages. CSS library is very popular for developing responsive layouts. So we are going to use Bootstrap 4 to style our web pages. So go to the Chrome browser and just type Bootstrap CSS CDN. Okay, Bootstrap 4 CSS CDN. So we are going to use CDN links instead of downloading and adding Bootstrap files to project. Scroll down and here just copy this CDN link and let's go back to our project, and just below title paste this dependency and just format the page. Yeah, there we go. And let's go back to browser again. If you are new to Bootstrap, then I highly recommend you to read about a Bootstrap. Okay, go to the components here and just go through these important components in Bootstrap, and also the content and a layout. Okay, so go ahead and click on tables here, and look at here, we are going to use Bootstrap Table Css classes to style our table. Alright, great. So we are going to use Bootstrap Table Css classes. So let's keep open this page as it is, because we are going to use a lot of Bootstrap CSS classes. Now let's go ahead and let's create a div here, div, and let's add a Bootstrap CSS class to this div, that is a container. So we are going to wrap up all the HTML code inside this container, and after that we are going to create a div again with a Bootstrap CSS class, a row, and then here we are going to create a heading, that is h1. This is a page heading, that is list students. After that we're gonna create a table now. So after the div with a class, Bootstrap class row, we're gonna create a table here, and let's add a Bootstrap CSS classes to this table, and go to the browser again, and look at here the Bootstrap CSS class table. And if you want to make a table like this, then you can use a Bootstrap CSS class table dark. And if you want to make table like this, then you can use Bootstrap CSS class, that is table header dark. Okay, and so let me copy this Bootstrap CSS, that is table stripped, and let me paste here, and let me copy one more Bootstrap CSS class, that is table bordered, and let me paste here. Okay, so within a table we're going to create a table header, and let's add a Bootstrap CSS class to this table header, that is table hyphen dark. And then we're going to create a row here, and then we're going to define a table column, so first is student first name, and let's define few more columns, that is student last name, and then student email. And here we define column for actions like update, delete, and etc. Okay, so this is the table header. After that we're going to define table body, and then table row here. Perfect. Now we need to display this table row dynamically, because if you see here student controller, we have added a list of students to the model, and we are going to display this list of students in a students file, right, students view. And this list of students we are going to iterate, and we are going to display in a table body. So for that we are going to use th : each attribute. So just remember, this is the thymeleaf attribute which we can use to iterate over a list of students, and then just access the students variable by using TimeLeap notation or syntax, that is dollar within a curly braces students. So this for each, that is th colon each attribute, just work as a for each loop, and here we need to get a student from students. Okay, and if you can just mouse over on this attribute, it says undefined attribute name, because we need to refer this attribute from official website of TimeLeap. So in order to in order to remove these warnings, what we can do is we can add a reference link to TimeLeap official website. So go to HTML here and just add XMLNS followed by :th and then followed by the official website link of TimeLeap. And if you can just mouse over here, the warning is disappeared. Okay, so these tags or these attributes are typically referred from TimeLeap official website. Now this is the th colon each attribute to iterate over a list of students. Now we're gonna display student name, first name, last name, and email. So look at here, this students comes from student controller here. Okay, we are going to access this key by using TimeLeap syntax like this. Now let's go and let's use td here and then th colon text in order to display a text. So this is the TimeLeap notation or syntax to display a model data, that is student is in our case is a model student, and model attribute, that is first name. Okay, similarly let's display last name and email as well. Student dot last name, student dot email. Perfect. Now let's run our Spring Boot application and let's see how it works. So go to our student management system application class. So this is the main entry point class of our Spring Boot project. So right click on it and run as Spring Boot app. So look at here the statements on a console. Create table students. So student table is successfully created by Hibernate automatically. We don't have to manually create the table. And our Spring Boot application is up and running on embedded Tomcat server on port 8080. Now let's head over to the browser and let's access this application. And the URL for our list students is /students. Okay, we're going to use this URL to access this method handler. Alright, in a browser just type localhost 8080/students and hit enter, and there we go, list students, and this is the table, student first name, last name, email, and action, and there is no records exist in a students table. Now we are going to add records to the students table. Okay, great. So instead of adding records manually in a database, what we're going to do is we're going to write a code to add a records to the table. Alright, so go to the Spring Boot main entry point class and we're going to implement here command line runner interface, and this provides a method called a run. So this run method basically executes when we run our Spring Boot application. So here we are going to write a logic to insert few student records. Before that we are going to inject student repository object. Okay, student repository and then student repository, because we are going to call student repository methods, right? That's why we are going to inject here. Perfect. Now let's go and let's create student object, student, and this is student1. Let's use a constructor here, and post name let's say Ramesh, and last name let's say Fadtari, and email something like ramesh@gmail.com, and just call student repository and then save, and just pass student1 object to this save method. So let's go ahead and let's insert a few more student objects. Student2 equal to new student, and let's add a second student, something like Sanjay, first name, and second name adds Jadhav, and email ID something like sanjay@gmail.com, and just call student repository and then call its method, that is save method, and then pass student2. Okay, similarly let's copy this and paste it here, and let's name it as student3 and give student3 as Tony, post name as Tony, and second name as Stark, email as tony@gmail.com, and just pass student3 to the save method. Okay, to keep it simple, let's keep these three students as it is, and you don't have to restart the Spring Boot application because we have added Spring Boot DevTool dependency, right? So whenever we make some changes in Spring Boot application, then this dependency will restart the server. Now let's head over to the browser again and let's refresh here. Okay, and here we go. So look at here, all the students are successfully stored in a database, and these students we can able to see in a web page. It means that we have successfully implemented list students feature.